Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us. On today's episode of Convention Not, Ryan and I chat with Lillian Gray Charles, owner of Style Therapy, based out of Atlanta, Georgia. You hear that title and you assume fashion and wardrobe, and you know what? Go ahead. Put Lillian in that box if you so choose. That'd be your shortcoming, because Lillian is about much, much more than picking out an outfit for the day. She's about female empowerment. And sure, matching that with that is part of it, but it goes so much deeper than that. I hope you'll all sit back and relax and get to know Lillian, what she does, what she cares about, what she so deeply, passionately, and sincerely invested her life's work into. Even if not, just get used to her. This badass lady is not going anywhere anytime soon.
I was just, we were hustling here for our listeners who know that like we're on video, but we don't share. I was just pulling this thing out, which I have a unique story about the ring light that I'm showing in the picture. The ring light was actually introduced by our guest today, Lillian, to my household. I want to say about a year and a half ago, Lillian Gray Charles, who I want to let you introduce yourself, but it was kind of ironic that like this ring light, who I've honestly suggested to so many coworkers, especially during this COVID thing, to any regard. I guess our guests probably want to know, like, who are we talking to? This sweet Southern voice on the other end of the line. And Lillian, maybe you could like take a second to introduce yourself, a little bit about who you are and what you do. Sure. And you already know about the show. We'll get onto the episode as we do.
Yeah. So my name is Lillian Charles, and I have a wardrobe consulting business that incorporates energy healing. Thankfully, in January 2020, I decided, I really could see so many more women if I really brought as many of my current clients of the past 8 years, and also moving forward online. Thank goodness I did that. So I work virtually with people women specifically around the world, to help them really uncover what it is that's holding them back energetically, relationally, physically, back from fully expressing themselves. So that's me in a nutshell. It can look like a lot of different things, a lot of different avenues. I also teach fitness. So I've been doing a lot of internal work while as many of us hopefully have been during quarantine. And it's really the same. It's the same underlying message over and over again in my workshops and fitness and in wardrobe consulting. It's who is it that someone else has told you that you are that you need to remove and take off and create a new story for yourself. So right now the emphasis is still on wardrobes. And I started in 2011.
Wow. That's a heavy, just the other day we talked to someone who looks at dead bodies all the time. And when he was done, I was like, they're already dead, You're changing lives. That's, I don't want to put any sort of negative tone on it, but that's the burden you bear is you're changing lives. Your clients aren't just getting a new outfit. They're walking away. I'm making it far too brief here, but they're walking away empowered, right? That's the ultimate goal. And to be clear, not just based on a new outfit. Like that's what I've grown to appreciate, Lillian. And I didn't want to do too much kind of this is intentional. We do limited background research on our guests because we actually find it. It kind of, that's a real good excuse to be kind of lazy. But at the same time, it gives us, it gives us a real opportunity. We're trying to be real here, and your feeds, your various like social media avenues, they're all so bright and positive and, to be honest, happy and uplifting. And I have to wonder, and we're going to get into it. Sorry to jump right into it, but
you're good.
Yeah, that's a heavy burden. You put a smile on every day with it, but like, damn, there's got to be some real heaviness to that maybe isn't always on your shoulder, you know?
I feel so seen. Thank you for acknowledging that. It's definitely, I started when I was 23, and I can get into how I got started, but I was doing my prerequisites for nursing school, and I was doing a midwifery apprenticeship at Grady, which is a public hospital downtown in Atlanta, which is really rough. The apprenticeship that I did, I was with like 16, 17-year-old low-income teenagers that were pregnant, that had no resources and terrible diets. And I left crying every day. It was really heavy. So I knew I wanted to do something supportive that wouldn't be soul crushing. But there are still parts of my job that are soul crushing. There are still stories that I hear that I know that I signed up to hear them. Like it's my job to kind of go into this battlefield of the closet. But a lot of people think like, oh, she's like a fashion blogger or something. And I'm like, oh, honey, no. I go in and I hear some pretty intense narratives of people's realities, as well as their really, really, really negative thought patterns. So it is pretty heavy. It can be as heavy as the Grady stuff.
So it's really, kind of hard to not like typecast things when you start to talk on a podcast, like, because, we're recording it and, it's kind of, trying to explain who we are and who we aren't. But like, was there like a turning point? Were you always like a happy kid, and so you decided to go into a career as such? Because like I always thought it was a midwifery. I'm so sorry.
Okay. People always say, "How do you say that word?"
Yeah. That caught my
Thanks
that
for
caught my
clarifying
attention
that.
too, and I didn't want to interrupt.
years.
I was like, "Whippery? Is she saying what? She's saying it right?"
It's not part of my normal vernacular, so I'm lucky I don't mispronounce it. But like I guess what I'm like stammering around, right? And like maybe this is part of like the dude part, because it's weird for us to talk about being happy, right? But like, did you show up, or did you leave college happy? Were you just like the happiest kid as a kid? You always wanted to share it. Like, how do you start to manifest it when you go into adulthood in, that way?
Gosh, I have to always first acknowledge that I grew up with really, 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 really incredible parents. And I realize every day of my life that that's not the case for 97%. All parents are doing the best they can, but I really hit the lottery. I hit the gold mine with my parents. And I have an older sister who's an attorney and a younger brother who's an attorney. And they just really steered us all to do what it was that we wanted to do, and said, what you're meant to do is what you will make the most money doing. Because it's what it's what you're here to fulfill. They wanted us in the schools that were the best fit for us. I went to 3 different schools in 3rd grade. They were always really exposing us, sheltering us in a way that molded us to be the 3 of us are very different and very unique, but we're all very fulfilled in our careers. That's rare. Have to props to John and Harriet. They were gold mine parents, and they still are. In terms of being happy, I think I had such a hard time in college my freshman year. If you've read any of my social media, it's actually not all happy. There's some pretty dark stuff in there, maybe attached to smiling images. But I experienced sexual assault in college, and I had a really hard couple of years throughout college overcoming post-traumatic stress disorder. So everything you see is really a result of a lot of fucking hard internal work, a lot of work. It's not just out of the womb happiness, for sure.
Well, I can't help but assume that not necessarily that particular experience, which I apologize, but I'm sure you don't want to go over, so we're not gonna revisit that. But that overall experience with, if you're just blissful and happy your whole life, I think it's pretty hard to relate and help somebody out of those dark holes that they may be in, right? I mean, I'm not saying that you need to have gone through darkness to remediate it, but I think it helps. Like it has to be a powerful influence.
I would definitely say, people say, I know, or they say like, I'm glad that, I lost a parent, or I did this, or lost my leg, or, got fired from every job I ever had because it brought me, I never say I'm glad, but I fully understand what I had to go through on a cosmic level to bring me to this place of how do you rebuild a woman from the inside out, and then how do you turn around and help someone else do that? And so, like I said, I don't ever say like I'm so happy, but I just understand the relevance and the why.
And I think when we were first talking about coming on the show, one of the things that intrigues me so much is about how I didn't know that about having such a structured family, right? Like when somebody comes and becomes an attorney, I think one of your parents is in healthcare, right? Those are pretty like very like certified careers, right?
Sure,
and in fact, if you didn't accomplish what you were supposed to, you probably, you didn't earn the ability to perform that career. Was there a time where the choice to go to a creative career, like really laid on your heart, in that way? Or was it like foundational? Was it like, oh my gosh, I found that this is not, I don't want to key in so much about Grady, but like, there's a big payoff for being a nurse, continuously, right? So how did you start to go that way, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like your parents were like, you got to go to law school, but like, that's a pretty big conversation to say, like, in a close family, my dad, I'm going to like quit my job and I'm going to do this.
Yeah. So actually, I graduated in 2010 from college, and I just was, my mom's family had been in real estate, and they had lost their asses in 2008. And so there was a lot of uncertainty, as you guys can remember, as we can all remember, still in 2010. It was so, going to nursing school was when I was thinking that was the route, was very much about certainty and very much about stability, having really witnessed like up and down. But another thing, the big thing about nursing was it was about service. And once I was like, okay, I have to do my undergrad again, for the prereqs, then apply to nursing school, then apply to midwifery master's programs. And my sister at the time she hadn't gone to law school. She was living in Kolkata, working for an NGO that helped children out of sex slavery. And so actually when I had such a struggle leaving this, like, oh, I want to go be a martyr too, because I thought, oh, what if the way that I'm going to serve is not going to be deemed real service because it has to do with clothes and fashion? And my parents were like, this is you, like, in a nutshell. You love supporting. I was women's studies and French double major. So they were like, this makes sense. Go do your thing.
Yeah.
And, really stable careers, they can fall apart too. I mean, doctors get fired, lawyers lose their jobs, positions get eliminated. Like, we're seeing now more than ever that there isn't really any number one stable job. I mean, maybe there are few, but for me, it was really about stability with staying in nursing school. And then my parents were like, you need to do what your heart is telling you to do.
So they were actually actuators in the decision in some ways. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I can identify with that. I've been an entrepreneur all of my life and most of my career. And so like, coming from like a blue collar background where like it's an hourly pay and is what it is. Even still, to be honest with you, maybe not so much with my immediate family, but like for sure with my like extended friends and family, it's really hard. Mike, I think you go through this too, right? Living away is part of it and coming home, but it's really hard, I think, for a lot of people to kind of understand. Everybody's willing to tell you who's an entrepreneur that like, this is real hard work, because it is, right? And it's extra work, more importantly. But the thing that I think that like, as I get into like the, second half of my life, or maybe like, maybe first third, finishing the first third of my life. I think that like it's harder and harder to identify with like a perspective that a career must be a certain way, right? Like, because like you said, you know, people lose their jobs. We talk a lot about economy too, right? And you also, I guess 2010, when I think about that, that was like the time when there weren't jobs. I mean, it was just weird place in America at that point in time.
Which my parents have reminded me a lot of in the past 2 months. Like, girl, you made something out of nothing in the middle of a wasteland. So, you know, when I've been like, oh God, like, you know, this is really changing a lot of things. Retail is really changing. This is really changing. They're like, you got this. So I'm really, this is a podcast episode about my parents. Thank you to them. They're
cool.
Just so amazing.
I'm definitely noticing, you know, the more guests we have, we can't throw them all into any boxes because we keep trying to find new places. But there are some themes. And one of the things you pointed out, and I love that you said that, you know, a stable job isn't necessarily sturdy. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing you there, but you know, a lot of our guests don't have real stable jobs. But we the whole show that we try to keep reiterating is like, if you have passion that satisfies your happiness, and you know, we all got bills, but that's as stable. That's your center. You know what I mean? And like, so many of us have that title, you know, and that title answers questions, but really doesn't. You know what I mean? Like that title, it doesn't define who you are, and it sure as hell isn't necessarily going to be there in the future. So sorry, but I wanted to revisit some of what you just touched on because I thought it was so kind of perfectly put. I do have to ask you though, so you go from a pretty structured world of nursing, you're in school, and you said that you started, so I'm assuming, you know, a graduation occurs, and you said you started this at 23?
I even applied to nursing school. I was doing nursing prereqs. Yeah.
That's what so you, so you get your undergrad, and basically drop all your books, you leave your diploma at the door, and you say, I'm going to do this. And like, Lillian, I hope this is in no way, but then what was this? You know, like now you're a finished product, girl. I see your website. I see your feeds. You know, you made it. Your parents even said so. But like, I'm sorry, but like, what the hell was day one? Like, how were you like?
That's a good question.
No, I swear there's a way I can make money doing this. You know, and again, I hope that is not an offensive question. I really hope.
I actually, so for the year after undergrad, I did the apprenticeship. I did a medical mission trip in Africa. I had volunteered for 2 years at a clinic downtown for the homeless and uninsured. And so there were just a lot. I mean, honestly, it had a lot to do with intuition. You know, there were these tugs at my heart that were like, this is close, but, and when people think working in a homeless clinic versus like working with people in their clothes seems similar, I'm like, yeah, because you're hearing you're hearing someone's
service
issue, and then you're providing a solution, or you're providing multiple solutions and helping them decide which one is the best one for them. So I was selling this line of jewelry.
Absolutely.
That was like trunk show style stuff. And I was babysitting. I mean, my parents cut me off after college. They were like, okay, go into the world. So I was babysitting. I was babysitting a lot.
Yep.
That was like my bread and butter while I was volunteering. I was going to community college to take these undergraduate courses to apply for nursing school. And my mom was like Tupperware sales? Like, you're going to sell like jewelry? And I went to a pretty expensive undergrad, so I'm sure they were like, God almighty, Lillian. Yeah.
This is not what a Wofford graduate does with their degree.
Out of Wofford to Agnes Scott College. And part of, yes.
Okay. Oh, that's what brought you to Atlanta then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
gotcha. Okay.
It was actually at these trunk shows that I would stand around, and back then, for whatever reason, trunk show business was hopping. Like, I was 23.
What are we talking? Like
this
20?
is 2011.
What year are we in roughly? Trunk shows, like
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I had been to Africa and I signed up for this trunk show thing, and I started selling jewelry like hotcakes. 50% of the line was under $50. And I literally was hustling, making sales calls, calling anybody and everybody I knew. Two of my aunts live in Atlanta. I was like, let me get in your crowd. Let me get in your crowd. Let me da-da-da. And people would come and they would just listen to whatever kind of advice that I had about their wardrobes. And I loved it because it fit everybody. It wasn't some, clothing line that would completely knock out a whole tier of women due to price or, size or anything like that. Yeah. And so I became like the number one salesperson in Georgia, and I was like a kid. And so I started carrying around a book of, people would say like, I can't even pick out a pair of earrings. Like I feel so uncomfortable picking this out. And I was like, what is that about? And we'd talk about it in front of between 8 and 20 women, 4 and 20 women. And at these trunk shows, and they would become these really heartfelt conversations around confidence and lack thereof, and what other people, my husband will make fun of me, or like no one at work would even recognize me if I wore a necklace like that. But I really love it. It was like always this barrier. Like I want to do this, but I can't do this. So I took that verbiage and ran with it hard and really said, I can help you with this. Because it's, to me, it was like this aha, duh moment. Like we can all feel amazing. It's just having somebody to help you through the process.
Yeah. People don't open up to everyone. And the fact that you had one after another, you know what I mean? Like those things are, whether it's cosmic or whatever word you want to put on it. I believe strongly in those vibes, that energy that you're giving out, and people are seeking your counsel and opening up to you like that. At some point, it's like, hey, even if I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but I know this person walked away feeling better. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're not here with all the answers, but
I'm imagining that like the main time of hipsters, right? Like that's like 2011, and like the Etsy's big, the flea market environment's big, like things like, those pieces. And right. So like you show up on the scene and like you got like real world experience, right? Like you've literally been around the world and you've been in the toughest part of America, in some ways, right? Areas that way. But like, was there somebody who pointed those idiosyncrasies out to you, or was that part of the jewelry brand in its own way? Or do you just kind of like start to notice those things, like what Mike was saying, like you just start like noticing those from show to show to show that you're able to impact? I mean, I assume it's mostly women. I don't, I rock bracelets too, but I haven't been to a trunk show in a long time. So,
I would be lying if I said that, part of it was that it felt good. It felt really good to be able to provide that solution.
Yeah.
And it was the same, whatever you want to call it, tiny voice, intuition, Holy Spirit that was saying like, this is not quite it. When I was in more extreme medical circumstances, close, but not it. Yeah. It was the voice that was like, this, pay attention to this. This is impact that you're meant to do. And then in terms of like the idiosyncrasies, my sister is about 6'1", and I'm like under 5'7", and so we always a lot of entrepreneurs, you see something growing up and you feel a struggle, and you're like for me it seems that it's always intricately tied into what an entrepreneur ends up doing in some capacity, whether it's your parents or sibling or grandparent. And so for me, it was like, wow, if there had been options for Julia, even tall, like J. Crew. I remember when J. Crew started making tall winter coats, and that was like a big deal for her.
Okay.
And so going to, trunk shows, and then I started speaking at like all these different, it's a very small, tiny little things like yoga studios or clubs for moms of preschoolers. I would just go and do talks about like self-expression through clothes. And I would constantly tie in all of these different pieces. And you talked about Etsy and vintage markets. I had lived in Paris for 5 months as my last semester of college. So had seen the world, done the flea market thing, and always said, it doesn't have to be brand new shit. It can be heirlooms. It can be things that you love that you get to incorporate into your overall style. And I can help you make it flattering too.
Hey, it's Ryan. Are you ever listening to something and wonder what the people look like? Well, fret not, listener. We have made a plan for you. You can get right over to our Instagram at convention_not_podcast and see pictures of most of our guests, either Mike's goofy ass and I, or anything you really want to. Go over there, again, at Instagram at convention_not_podcast. Take a second to follow us while you're there too. My sister is 6'1", but throughout school, I could definitely identify like how those pieces were a big part of it. And how like learning to like fit in just becomes such a big piece of it. And I think that the other thing that really occurred to me when you were describing the articles of clothing is kind of like the vessel, right? And understanding that like there is really not many people, save like caustic narcissist, which we could do a whole like panel on. I bet you would love to participate on.
Sure.
That like clothing actually does hit like 95% of humans, regardless of anything, in a vulnerable spot and in a spot where you could use it as a vessel to express yourself, right? Like those are two very fundamental things that when we're bound up or imbalanced, it's often because we're not able to express ourselves. Whether again, you're like a yogi and like that's your throat, that's your chakra, or whether you're a Christian and it's your ability to speak out or any of the other things that I just am going to go on to generalize and typecast. But like, I think that like, that's such a beautiful thing to like walk away from, right? Like there's no fucking social science degree or like therapy certificate. All respect to, people who work in those industries and pursue those educations that are going to treat you or teach you how to have a vessel with that way, or also like how to unite women, I think, in that way.
There's so many stories, right, in our clothing. And so I kind of feel like I'm reading a different book every time I see a different closet, because we're just talking about this, I call it the psychology of choice, whether it's the choice of why you ordered something or bought something, or it's the choice of why you're choosing this garment over this garment. And then, I think everything is so intricately connected that, when I say, okay, so you've got like 7 of the same thing sitting here, which a lot of people do. They're like, oh, this fits, I get it in every color. And then they end up only wearing this color. And then, and then their options are less and less and less, or it's a similar style. Even that, I mean, there's so many like idiosyncrasies and metaphors I can use. And like, don't you believe that there's more for you? There's a message in every piece. And, a lot of people have a lot of shame about what they own. That's probably one of the things that I think is hardest to get through to people to actually hire me, is because they're like, this is, 99% of women, you would just die if you saw my closet. Well, I would have died hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times in 8 years. If I just died over everyone that said I was just going to die over their closet. You know what I'm saying? Like I would literally be dead a bazillion times. But it's shame. It's like, I used to be this weight, or now I'm this. And, I used to be able to afford this, and so there's attachment to the past, attachment to the future. What if I get pregnant? I can't get pregnant. What if I start dating again? I don't know if it's just, there's just conversations galore around our clothes. And so, it really is a vessel. It's a medium. It's a vehicle for a lot of other things that are going on in our lives.
I want to acknowledge that part of your ability to do that is by staying full yourself, right? So I'm sure, I know you have a dope sneaker collection because I see it. It's part of your business. But like, how do you stay full in that part when, to keep, available for the rest of those clients in that way?
A lot of people, because I teach spin, they'll say like, oh, will you be my trainer? Or what do you eat? what do you da-da-da-da? And so I realized early on, like, I just have to continuously point people back to, this is not about like what I do or what I even wear. This is about what you need. So I'm going to send you to like the best holistic nutritional therapy person that I have. I'm going to send you to the person that is really going to help you with stress and anxiety management. Here's a podcast that I've done about it. Then you can check out this person that, does stress management. So I try to have a very large list of resources. On my website, there's a whole self-care thing, and it's, has everything from like who I go to for chiropractic care to, and it has everything that I can think of. I have personal trainers that I refer people to.
And is that your jam? Is that like you're sharing your vulnerability there, right? Like you're saying the literal chiropractor that you go to, right? Like, so is that you publish the way that you do it, right? Like you share that with people.
What's best for me.
It's so awesome.
They're going to help you figure out what's best for you. And I think that that's a big point that across social media, we just go like, oh, well, this is working for this person, whether it's clothes or a diet, or I don't mean diet as in like fad diet, but like a meal plan. And we just have to stop doing that. We just have to stop all subscribing to the same fucking thing all the time, because we're all such unique individuals with unique needs that, we have to figure out what's best for us.
To me, there's a huge difference between, going into a therapy meeting, sitting down and just having a conversation, and the potential in your world for fanhood, adoration, obsessiveness, right? Like how do you differentiate between someone trying to improve themselves and maybe them just trying to become you, right? Like that's not the worst thing in the world to have some followers. I mean, the term influencer it's just real dangerous, right? And the more I talk to you, Lillian, like I get it. You just want to influence people to be the best of themselves, but you know what I mean? There's so many other people out there that are so fueled by this is my 10, and that's nothing short of that will settle. So if you don't, can you share on like any experience with that, or like just kind of your growth through this kind of growth? Like how do you see those
anymore? But I feel like
is that a red flag? You know what I mean?
To recently of my career, like maybe I think some of it had to do with my age. Is that women really that were 40s, 50s. People that are engaged in social media, but not my own age, would say things like, of course you can wear that, or only, people that look like you can do this or that and the other. Yeah. And I can't tell you how, although it almost makes me cry to think about it. Although I knew it was 1000% their fucking problem, it still hurt me to my core, because I was like, this is not the message I'm trying to drive home to you. I'm never trying to drive home, you should do this the way I'm doing it. And my message has always been, do this thing that works for you the way that you need to do it. And I really try, when I do talk about brands that I love, I really try to use inclusive brands. Spanx is an Atlanta-based national brand. And I've done a lot about their leggings, because they're extra small to 3X, like plus size. They have great bras. I know I'm talking to two married men, but I love talking to women about lingerie, because I just think it's an important part of self-care.
Shout out.
And so I'm trying. I'm trying to, everyone hire Lillian. Get your lifestyle therapy. When people say things like, well, I don't look like that, and I go, this is available in your size. It's kind of an easy clap back to say, well, that's because you haven't tried it yet. Or I'll just write back, have you tried it?
Yeah. 2011 to today, you're pretty well into it. Lillian, can you give me, or our audience, literally, and this is by no means, we're not closing. I just want a tangible example of
I opened up my
maybe not the whole relationship, but literally, like, how do people, does someone just like DM you one day and say like, how much does it cost for you to return my call and talk to me?
I really.
I know
encourage
that
people, in
sounded
fact, on the
super
bottom of my
creepy,
post,
but
I've started posting this information that says, if you
how
love
does it
this,
happen? And
tap
then
my
what?
email. Don't at me, don't DM me, because
Oh,
it just I end up taking screenshots and then going back and saying like, oh wait, can you send me your email address? And then it gets convoluted. And if I just start throwing prices at people, they're like, well, you know. And I have all these attachments, forms, links that really I want to show up for people. If you're interested, I am fully committed to showing up and showing you every step of the way, what it takes, what the reviews look like, what my online portal of wardrobe creation looks like. And so I really encourage people, like, please don't DM me, please email me. As of January, I very much stripped my business down to create something new so that people were really aware of how holistic of a program this is. Because I think there are people that have heard about me on Facebook groups and stuff, and I get in their closet and they're like, why are you asking me all these personal questions? And I'm like, because it has to do with your wardrobe.
Like the name is style therapy. What the hell, man?
Yeah. So I do this thing called an Illumination Session first, and it's a really, really important, fantastic step. And it is an energetic read. So I'm also a Master Reiki energy healer. Okay. And I do use intuition to really kind of listen and discover what's underneath the conversations of people telling me about their experiences and their clothes. And I ask them what they feel best in, where they get caught up, you know, where they've felt hopeless in their wardrobe, what scenarios that they get ready for and they have panic attacks, because that's a lot of people. That's men and women. And then I will typically pull cards for them as well, like oracle cards. And
so this is always a face-to-face, in person.
This is all virtual. This is with people around the world. Yeah. And then afterwards, I send them a whole packet of like, here are the colors that are going to be amazing for you, no matter how old you are. Here are the brands that you've never heard of before that are perfect for your shape. By the way, here's the shape that you have, and you don't need to beat yourself up about not fitting into X, Y, or Z. It's just because it's not right for your shape. There's nothing wrong with your body.
Just rock your shape.
Yeah, rock your shape. And so I send them basically like these foundational things that are like, if you want to try these brands, these shapes, and now you know that like these are your parameters. If you want to go at it on your own and see what you can do, go for it. But I would love to help you strip down the rest of your closet, get to where you need to be, uncover more of the internal truths and internal narratives that you're going through. Wow. 9 times out of 10, they want to do that too.
Most of us walk away from therapy with just a bunch of tears and not looking too great.
Right.
It's not fair to, and this is probably guys like Ryan and I are just cavemen and don't appreciate the value. I mean, and we're a couple guys who care about how we look. Whatever. This dude's wearing a football jersey to an interview with a stylist. You know, like, I mean, come on.
I hear that on every date that I go on. People are like, I didn't know what to wear. And I'm like, clothes.
Oh, I would be I'm not a real, I don't suffer a lot of panic, but I get real nervous when I'm talking to a psychologist, and I would be real nervous to show up and be and in any way, shape, or form evaluated. I just, the sensitivities, we all have that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, in my 20s, I was always like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, why haven't you done this? You know, and now I just kind of sit back and smile, and I think that's even worse. So, and people are like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, nothing, I'm just listening. And they're like, oh God. So I don't know what's.
Yeah. You've gotten real good at that side of the table, right? Am I on your couch? Yeah. They get squirmy. You mentioned, and I appreciate you clarifying that, because I couldn't help but assume some, you know, and I know you're bigger than just the region, but I kind of figured it was more focused in the kind of ATL. And you said global.
Recently was working with this woman who lives in Italy, but she works in Africa. And then I have a client who is a nomad. She's from the Southeast, but she literally lives all over the world. And that can be challenging just because of the brands in other nations and knowing how those brands fit. And so I've had to do some extensive research on like, okay, what are brands that ship everywhere? What are brands like, looking at their sizing charts and that kind of thing?
Ryan teases me all the time because our friendship has spanned me living in a couple different regions. And I used to wear a suit every day. And that was a big part of my confidence and because I look good in a suit and I could rock that suit. And like, I'm a competitive person and I lived in Toronto before I moved out to Hawaii. So I'm in Toronto in 2010 as, you know, the hipster boom is blowing up. And I'm doing my best to keep up, you know, and I moved to Hawaii, and specifically I live on the North Shore of Hawaii, and I have a suit that I've worn once in 6 years. And when I wore that suit, the people at the interview I was at, like, laughed at me. Like it was inappropriate. Yeah. It was off-putting to wear a suit to a job interview. So that's kind of what I was getting at, is if you had to deal with the transition of like, hey man, I've been working with you for a few years. You just uprooted your life. Okay. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but wardrobe wise, let's make some immediate changes.
The really cool thing about my work is that I've actually been with so many women through like major life transitions, whether they were like dating, engaged. Okay. What are you going to wear for your engagement shoot? Okay. What is your wedding dress going to look like? Okay. Now you're pregnant. Okay. like all these different things.
You've done it. Yeah.
So
which has to be the important part of a relationship with a stylist. Sorry to interrupt you. But like a brand is a brand, right? And so if it's just your brand with your family only, you know, over years, you have to have that relationship that keeps going and going and going.
I've had a lot of women that, you know, I now work with their sisters that live in other cities, or I work with their mothers who are in their 80s, and they're like, you're like our cousin, you know, like you're just like here. You're like the fairy that's like always here. Which
no, I could see that.
Yeah, which is, you know, like when you're that fairy to hundreds of people, that's exhausting too, you know, because that's a lot.
And that is what I know Ryan wants to get into a little bit. He touched on it before when he was referencing how do you continuously maintain your tank, right? Because all you do every day in work is you empty a bunch of it, right? You're giving out your love and passion, but are there enough hours in every evening to fill that back up? I mean, how do you stay you?
Yeah, I would be lying if I said that I've done a great job with that over the years. That was really my push to go online and bring everybody virtual. In 5 months ago, you know, the commute was really getting to me, and the emotional, like being in one place for hours on end just to grab a snack and go to someone else for another several hours, and then going to teach a fitness class right after that, was getting to be a lot. And I'm by no means quote unquote older, but I just started thinking, okay, longevity wise, I truly want to continue these relationships for a long, long time. And I'm just burning the candle at every end. And people knew that.
This episode is made possible by Lillian Charles Style Therapy. Lillian combines traditional personal styling with energy healing to help women unravel physical, emotional, and mental barriers that keep them from living full, expressed lives. If today's episode is intriguing to our female listeners, you can find out more about the style therapy services Lillian provides by visiting lilliancharles.com. Lillian's methods aren't meant to get stuck in your podcast app. Put style therapy to work in your life, or share this with a woman who is in need of transformation. Mike and I both wish something like this was available for us, so it's convention not approved.
Most entrepreneurs, I feel like, make that transition for monetary reasons, or at least that's what they express, right? Like the more people we have, the wider our reach can go, the more money we can make with our efforts, right? That's not gross.
Yeah.
There's
No,
nothing
there's
wrong
nothing
with
wrong with
that,
that.
right? But
No,
I think
mine was energetic.
I love that you recognize like you recognize like, man, I am running full speed into a wall. Like it's a little bit easier for some people. It's easier for a lawyer to run in, like a lawyer running into a wall might screw up a case or two.
Yeah.
You running into a wall, you've got a lot of people with emotional dependence on you basically always having more. You know, like, which is, you built that, and all of a sudden you're probably losing a lot of sleep. That was real important. I'm glad we got you this month instead of October. I can imagine how rough.
It's hard to talk about this without, Ryan's Anna would totally understand this. I got a little bit more into astrology in this past December, and she said, my astrologist said, your moon is in Aquarius, which means that you can actually be kind of cold. And I could see that when I was really, and I don't think anyone that meets me is like, Lillian's not cold, but I can be cold when I feel pressed for, when I'm at a low to empty tank and I'm getting text messages at 9:30, 7:45 on a Saturday night, like I did last weekend and that kind of stuff. And I mean, part of it was age, part of it was naivety, part of it was just the hustler mentality of I have to answer everyone. But I did build a business on being accessible. And it's still hard for me to say that wasn't maybe 100% setting me up for energetic success. And so I'm having to walk back on some of that now, and it's been awkward. It's been painful. It's for me. I hope that it hasn't been too much so for clients, but you get to a client base, and I started saying to family and friends when I would be hanging out with them at night, and they'd be like, "Why are clients?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. You don't text an architect at 8 p.m. You just don't,
But they text you anytime, right? Like, would that literally be happening?
Oh, yeah.
You're getting texts at like midnight from clients? Because the boundaries in your world are kind of unclear.
And time zones too, right? Just straight up.
Time zones too.
Yeah, and it wasn't a problem until there were as many people as there are. And then of course social media on top of that, like the DMs. I'm kind of a I don't like to have like a lot of like red check marks around my phone. Like I think like everything to be checked. So that means I check everything, and Ryan knows because we've been following each other for a while, but I take social media cleanses.
Clear that inbox.
Yeah, I definitely jump off of Instagram for days at a time just to be like, okay, what's important? Like, what is actually important? What is real? What is, but it's, all of this has been growth and challenging and something that I'm still figuring out for sure, to be totally honest.
That's cool. That's cool. So at that point, right, and this is something that we ask almost all of our guests, and we're getting close to the end here. So I want to ask you the question, but I also want you to know that I went and got the archetype core copy of the book, so that this is something that our listeners are going to be like, WTF? But I think it's smart to pull an archetype card for this. I'll explain why when we get to that part.
Oh,
but
I love that you did this.
Kind of like move toward the closing part just a little bit, is we ask most of our guests, at least the ones who open up with us, and you can notice this if you're a listener, that we've done a lot of interviews and we're gracious for each of them, but some of them we get to have like this, where like somebody really opens up with us and they really talk about something from their heart. And I think that one of the best questions is today, what would you say to your teenage self, right? Like what would you say to that person if you had an opportunity to mentor her for some time?
Is this directly related to business or?
This is just directly related to you.
It's just you talking to you.
You talking to you. You get that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
It's the genie model kind of a thing. What would you say to her?
The thing that I would tell my younger self is that there's nothing wrong with you. And that there's you know, that you can feel things that other people can't feel, and it's a blessing. It's, you know, it makes some of life more challenging to be as empathic as I am. And it's okay to feel deeply. It's a really beautiful thing. And that it's helpful, that it's something that will propel me in life, even though it felt like it bogged me down for a long time, that my feelings bogged me down. And also that feelings are just feelings, you know, they come and they go, and they're like waves, and we experience them and then we let them go. But I always felt a little bit different, and a lot of people that follow me on social media, they're like, what? Oh, you have all these people that follow you and think you're great. But I've always felt like I was a little bit of an outsider, no matter where I was. And so it's become really important to find a home in myself, in my physical body and in my energetic body and spiritually. And a lot of that came from this story that I told myself when I was growing up, that like, something's wrong. Like, I'm weird. Like, I don't fit in. I'm not like everybody else. And now I'm like, it's okay to not be like everybody else. It's cool.
Because of your empathy, because of your ability to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's.
I have a question that I feel like the answer may be related to what you just shared with us, which was really beautiful. Thank you, Lillian.
You're welcome.
Where's the gray come from? I love the website, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, so Lillian is oft-branded as Lillian Gray Charles. Her website, intentionally gray. So yeah, what other than the obvious middle between black and white?
Yeah.
Is that the...
So my middle name is Gray. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's your actual middle name.
Want me to spell this out, or?
I'm gonna throw a drum roll. We're gonna throw a drum roll on that part.
It's obviously it's in between the black and white, but it's also, you know, for me, it was like, it's about being myself, intentionally gray, like being like right here in the middle of things. And also, I think that we're just so quick to jump, you know, like, well, we got to go ahead and make a decision. Like, who am I? Like, what am I going to do? But it's okay to wrestle with yourselves and wrestle with yourself and ask questions of yourself and be in the gray zone that most people are like, I want to know if I have the job or don't have the job, if I'm getting married, if I'm getting divorced, if I'm, you know, and it's like, sometimes the most profound and beautiful answers about where we're supposed to be happen in that pressure cooker.
You were blessed with that middle name. I'm a big fan of the color of the theme. I wasn't sure if maybe you were just a big Counting Crows fan.
No.
But gray is my favorite color as well. So
Mike, Lillian's probably too young to remember.
I wasn't going to say that.
Come on. I'm sure she's heard the song Mr. Jones before, though.
Love this song.
Come on. It's perfect. It's perfect. No, thank you for that. I was honestly like, man, she has branded her, but you were born for this, girl. Like, it's perfect.
It's a family name, very old family name.
I really like that.
And I always tell people it's Gray, like the color, but apparently the color is spelled the EY too. So who knows?
I'm going to pivot towards the end of the show here. But what I want to do though is I want to close the show with this card reading. Why I think it's kind of like important. I'm a scientist, like me personally. My religion would probably be scientist if I were to pick it. But some time ago, as my wife learned about yoga and started to kind of like tune into many of the kind of spiritual parts of what a practice of yoga is, along with the workout of yoga, which doesn't always happen to be my spirit. I mean, I make no secret. Mike is the same about meditation as my daily practice, as my spiritual component. But one of the things that came along with this kind of like, let's just say, journey of improvement that she has gone upon, Lillian, this is something that I invariably tie to you because our experiences, I've been through some of your meditation sessions and some of the things that you've done for people in that way. But it's this author, Kim Granz, creates these decks, right? And it probably started with like a tarot deck, which makes people feel some kind of way a lot of times, right? Like maybe it's gypsy, or maybe it's goofy, or maybe it conflicts with their personal religion. It's Wiccan or whatever it is. That's all well and good. That's fine. But I think that Kim Krans has done a good job because she has been an author who has created kind of this following by publishing these other decks that are easier to identify with. And so Anna has a bunch of these decks. And during this chat today, I went and I picked up the archetype deck. And the archetype that I chose is the warrior, which I'm going to read the message for as the closing of the show. Before I read that message, though, I'm hoping you could just give like a real quick synopsis of how I do get at you. Mike did a good job there with the with the website. I think there are some folks out there who are clients potentially for you. If I'm interested in becoming your client, I think you said an email, maybe you could share that with us. If I'm interested in just kind of like finding out what you're about before I want to send that email, how do I do that? And then once you're done doing that, I'm going to go ahead and close the show with this. I think it's important. It's a little weird. Mike is extraordinarily tolerating me through this process. And so
that makes me sound intolerant.
No, you're not intolerant by
right?
any stretch of the imagination. It's part of what brings us so close together. But tell us how we get a hold of you. I don't know if I said that right, but I'm not a radio host. I'm just like a guy who gets to have these cool conversations. And I'll close out the episode with the meaning of the warrior of the archetype card, because I think it fits the show.
They're always fitting, by the way. They are always fitting. Even if you don't want them to be fitting, they're fucking fitting.
It's weird.
So my best way to reach me is heygirl@lilliancharles.com, LILLIANCHARLES.com, heygirl@lilliancharles.com. It's also my voicemail now, by the way. If someone tries to call me, it just goes straight to voicemail. It says, please email me. Yes. My website is lilliancharles.com, and then my Instagram is Lillian Gray Charles, at Lillian Gray Charles. Intentionally Gray is a workshop, meditation movement business that I have kind of on the side, but really I've incorporated the practices that I teach in those workshops into one-on-one coaching, which is the most exciting change that I've done in my business this past year. So you can check out Intentionally Gray if you want, but all of the services of what I offer, including Reiki, are on lilliancharles.com.
I hope we could inspire some listeners to contact you, because all of those things are highly accessible. And as we become more comfortable communicating across these screens, a little bit forcibly in 2020, right? But like that stuff is all accessible. Yeah. Is it men and women? Just to be clear,
it's women, right? It's women only? Yeah.
Okay.
I only work with men on referral, because when I first started, I was getting like emails from the suburbs of, either single guys,
creepsters,
and I was just like, oh no. So referral,
please,
they have to want to do it. It can't be, based on what their partner says, or they have to really want to do it. Otherwise, I don't want to work with anybody that's like, oh, I have to do this. My wife
I get that.
Oh, get that out of here. Come back to me when you're ready and you have a better attitude about it. So that's that.
Cool.
No, Lillian, Ryan, before you warrior us out, I just honestly want to take the moment to be very, very open and honest with you that I had no trepidation coming into the interview. I was eager and excited to meet you. I didn't know about your background at all, and to be honest, it wasn't clear to me because I don't know another Lillian Gray Charles or someone who does what you do. And I just I'm so appreciative of you sharing what you shared today. Not so much for me as much I just think our audience, you're such a conduit for the power of, it's not just fashion. It's not what other people think of you. It's about feeling good. You know what I mean? And whether that's by earrings or outfits or, just having someone that returns your emails. I really applaud you, Lillian. I want you to keep doing what you're doing, but don't grow too big, girl. That's gonna be too exhausting. You're gonna have to give too much of yourself away. So preserve yourself. You were really great to talk to, and thank you so much. Come on. Oh, it has been just such a pleasure and such a breath of fresh air to talk to two men that are so grounded and
as much as you joke about it, like, to hear you say, I feel so good in my suit, and to hear Ryan say, I love my sneaker collection. These are important parts of ourselves that we get to convey through, what we're proud of. And it's just been really a huge honor, and again, a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
It's not by coincidence. It's not, I wouldn't even say, Mike, that it's easy for us to be that way. I think that that's part of like growth. We've been good friends across the country for a lot of years, even before FaceTime. And so I hope that there are other guys out there, right? Like, we're not all the same. And just the same way that like we don't want to typecast. I feel like I've said that word a lot today, but it's important, right? Like, it's okay to be a certain way. Like, it's fine. And I think in a lot of cases when it comes into gender stuff, it's even a little bit easier to feel typecast in a certain way. So, all right. I am going to close out here. This is a great episode. Love it. But I'm going to read the warrior card, and we'll catch up for just a couple seconds before we sign off. So the warrior from Kim Cran's Archetypes deck, it reads like this. We often envision the warrior as an armored figure with sword in hand moving blindly toward the battle. Yet the deeper aspects of this archetype bring us face to face with death itself. The warrior stands precariously at the edge of life and death, trusting the eternal to guide the sword's blade. The warrior's work requires presence, alignment, and purpose. If and when the warrior loses its center, meaningless confrontations and violence are their default response when this card appears. It is important to question the battle at hand. It's likely a great one with deep roots and long-standing tensions. The actions you take will stay with you long after the dust settles, so choose wisely, brave one. As you draw your sword, realign with the eternal wisdom within, then surrender to the battle. It's a pretty powerful statement. I think it's cool how when you draw something like that, it's not so much about like the magic, well-written deck like this. It just kind of like, it promotes identification with every reader, right? And I think that that's like part of the magic of why these types of things have been around so long. That tarot's been around as long as the Bible, or that, those pieces just have been around, So to any regard, really appreciate it.
That was very, very, very astute, accurate, on point, all those things.
Yeah.
That was
Thanks for joining us, Lillian.
Thank you. Of course.